Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go live here. And this way I do my best doing reviews because it's more off the cuff. It's more like in the now. Okay. And you guys can watch this later from the beginning. If you're just tuning in, I appreciate it. But again, you can watch this from the beginning. We can go from there. So basically, what I'm going to be talking about is I had the opportunity to review and also buy a course from James Van Praagh. Okay. And if you guys don't know who that is, look him up. He's a very influential medium, and the way that he does things is it's very well put. It's very like, it's just like watching a master kind of work. And so being able to learn from him, being able to learn from his courses, that's kind of what it's taught me. And it's taught me how to put something into a template or put something into a framework. The one person who's tuning in now, I'm talking about reviewing James Van Praagh's courses on mediumship and psychic development. And I'm going to go into that because I know when people are developing as psychics or when people are developing as mediums, there's a lot of like what if scenarios in their mind. And especially there's kind of this feeling of like, what if something's happening and I'm going astray and all the information I'm learning isn't going to help me. It's not going to actually be something I can use. So in this course, there's practical knowledge, and he teaches you how to access your own psychic ability. And with that being said, it's something that can be easily done, but it's something that definitely takes time and it takes effort to do. And so I had the opportunity to review the Psychic Intuitive course, and I actually bought the Mediumship course from him because they kind of build up off of each other. So a medium is going to be very psychic. That's kind of the whole deal, right? But not every psychic is going to be a medium. So you have to actually be a really good psychic to be a medium, okay? And they're basically operating off of a couple different levels, okay? If you want to take it like you have normal human consciousness and you want to focus on a level, if we're doing levels, we're talking about right here. We're talking about, and I'll set the gauge so you guys know what I'm talking about. But this is normal human consciousness. Being intuitive is a little bit higher. And this is like where your consciousness is starting to really stretch out. When we go up a little bit higher, this is being psychic, okay? And when we go up higher past that, it's being a medium. And then higher still past that, and you get into other levels of mediumship. And it can actually get pretty crazy with the levels of mediumship. But what we're talking about here is more of the basic stuff, because there's groundwork. There's things that need to be prepared. A lot of the stuff that I learned from these courses, I haven't learned anywhere else. And he talks about proper grounding work, which needs to be done. And I've actually done this with clients where I've tried to read them without being grounded versus with being grounded through his method. And I could actually read people a hell of a lot better than I could before. And it's about setting intentions and it's about doing things that way. So with that being said, I'll go into the intuitive psychic course that he let me review. And so basically you start off and he gives you a welcome to the course, okay? And these courses right now are on sale and you can get them for cheaper. They're not cheap though. This is like an investment in your future kind of a thing. But they're 25% off right now. If you guys want, you can look at the link down below. I'm not trying to plug it to get money because I'm not an affiliate with this at all. So if you guys buy it, that's good for you. But again, I'm not affiliated with this. If you buy it or don't, it doesn't affect me. But he is a really good teacher. And he's someone who has been doing this for years, and everything that he does is of the highest quality. And I wouldn't be telling you guys otherwise. So you start with the course introduction, and then you go into the kind of how-to and why you want to do it. Like, why would you want to be a psychic? Is it to make money? Is it just to make money? Because if that's the reason, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. If it's to be famous, if it's just to make money, you're doing it for the wrong reason, because what a psychic or a medium is trying to do is uplift people. That's always the end goal. It's not about the money. It's not about anything else. It's good if you can make a living off of it, absolutely, but it's not about that primarily. It's about raising the vibration and helping people with that kind of energy. So with that being said, you have he talks about chakras. He talks about the grounding work, which is incredibly important. And he talks about running energy in your body, which at first sounds like something it's like imagination at first. But as you come to find out, imagination is actually part of expressing that psychic ability. That's why children mostly are more psychic, because there's no limits, there's no boundaries. And so we're talking about that kind of energy where people are focusing on that childlike energy, that youthful kind of energy, that vibration that children have. And it's because there's no boundaries, there haven't been hindrances. But as the child grows up, there's boundaries, there's limitations that are put on the child, and that makes it so that they block off their own psychic ability. It could be a dream that they had, and the parent telling the child over and over again, it was just a dream, that's not real, and slowly eroding away that kind of sense of mystical wonderment, if that makes any sense for you guys. But that kind of blocks psychic ability. So this course, in a way, helps you to reawaken that, because when you're psychic, when you're developing as a psychic or a medium, you're focusing on the wonderment and the curiosity of self-exploration. And then from that, you can help other people find themselves again. But you first have to find yourself, and that's called unfolding, or the unfoldment. When we're focusing on that, and we start to unfold and we start to become our own psychic selves, our real psychic selves, that's when the magic starts to happen. Before that, there's no real magic, there's no real connection, and we will start to question ourselves on if psychic ability or mediumship ability is even real, which it absolutely is. But there's a sense of doubt that's been instilled in our society, and that makes it very difficult for us to kind of roll with the flow, so to speak. So with that being said, he goes into how to channel energy, how to run the energy. And again, at first it sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It sounds like all that. But once you actually start playing with the energy and you start doing the meditations, which, yes, you have to meditate. And it can be, at first, it's difficult to turn the mind off. It is very difficult. I've had days, weeks, months where it's just almost been impossible. But eventually you arrive to center again, and you can start to focus, or gently focus your intention on what it is you want to manifest. And if you really are sincere about developing your spiritual gifts, then you're going to be able to develop your spiritual gifts. If you're someone who's doing it to impress friends, or you're someone who's doing it for those reasons, you're not going to develop as a psychic or a medium, okay? Because it's an ego thing. It has to come from unconditional love. It can't come from ego. And that being said, he's also someone, because I personally, I grew up in a more religious background, but I'm not religious now. And so he talks about things in a way where it's not talking about God and Christ and things like that, which is okay to talk about, absolutely. But for me personally, I had to have a connection where it's like we're talking about universal energy, which again, it's the same thing, but I'm triggered by certain words, by certain events. And for me to be able to relate to something where it's not talking about things in such a way, it makes it easier. It makes it easier for me to understand it, because the way God relates with me is this old, when I think of God, it's like this old dude with a beard, the whole thing coming down, and he's very stern and he's very strict, but he loves you, but he's very stern and strict, and he doesn't like this and he doesn't like that, but he loves you, kind of a thing. And with the spiritualist movement that we're focusing on now, especially in these courses, there's not so much talk about that. It's not from a Christian viewpoint or from anything else. It's from a spiritualist viewpoint. And for me, that's a huge thing. That helps me a lot, because I don't respond well with any other way of learning. And I feel like maybe some of you guys are that way too. So definitely it focuses on achieving your own spirituality. And the thing with this is, with being a psychic or a medium, is that you have the experience and then you believe. It's not the opposite. With religion, it's you believe first and then you have the experience. With this, it's you have the experience first and then you believe. And then you can kind of go off your own truths, and you can do that. And the whole time he's talking, he says things along the way of, here's what I believe to be true. And that's the spiritual people you want to follow. If someone not supposed to be that way, it's supposed to be free flowing. And the truth for each person changes. It's a dynamic target. It's not something that's set in stone. And so you want people that are continuing to grow, because as soon as you stop growing, either as a psychic or a medium or as a person, that's when there starts to become like the death of the consciousness. That's when we start to get into our belief systems and we become rigid and we become stale and we think that that's all there is. And in perceptionary points, it seems that way, but anyway, it goes on and on, right? So he goes into the chakras, he goes into grounding, talking about bringing energy and talking about mixing energy together. The Tao also talks about that. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate that. The Tao also talks about that. And basically, it's just taking energies and it's mixing them together. And when we do that, we start to balance ourselves. When we're balanced, we can focus on spirit messages or psychic messages as they come through. And he goes into all of the different ways of psychic development. You have clairvoyance. Everyone has clairsentience, which is clear feeling. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. Clairgustance is clear tasting. Clairaudience is clear hearing, right? And they're French words, but it means clear. So clair, clear, they sound very similar. So he talks about all of that and how to develop these different gifts, right? And I've talked about that on my channel a little bit. He goes into a lot more depth, and he obviously has a lot more confidence. I'm learning. I'm not being hard on myself. I am learning. But it's good to learn from a master who's been there, from someone who's been there, versus someone who's still trying to get their training wheels, right? And he even says so himself, that he's not a complete spiritual master. Nobody really gets to the point where you're a complete master. You just get to a point where you've learned enough that you can teach other people what you've learned. You don't really master it. You just sort of teach it, and you continue to learn, because what you learn as a student from a teacher, if you become a teacher, then you're going to also be learning from the student. It's kind of a two-way street in that. And so, and it goes on, and I've said that again, but he goes on and he talks about how the colors of auras relate to things, a little bit about psychometry, which is being able to pick up objects and being able to read them. And basically, you can develop psychically in any way that you would want to. If I can remember right, there's someone who, the way that they would psychically see things, I think it was through asparagus, or it was through artichokes or something along those lines, and they could stare at it, and there was the patterns, there was something going on there, and they would put themselves in a trance, and they would use that to see the future. And you can do that with basically anything, because all you're doing is you're putting your, and when there's that conscious link, you can go into kind of like a trance-like state, and you can start to pick up information. At first, though, when you're focusing on psychic information, it seems like it is imagination. It seems like it's something that's just kind of chattering, and it's not really you, or it's not really real, right? But as time goes on and we start to build up a confidence in ourselves, then we can start to understand that it actually is a real thing. It's a real phenomenon, and we can connect with people in a way that's like, soul power 2.0. We can really connect with people. We can really understand people. And then when that starts to happen, we start to focus on our connections with people. And we start to understand that I don't like this person, or I don't want to be in this person's presence. And we start to set boundaries, which is something he talks about as well, is setting boundaries for the spiritual life of yourself with spirits, or for people in person. Setting boundaries is actually a very huge part of developing spiritually. When we start setting boundaries, we start valuing ourselves, and we can start to develop. And I know it seems like a lot that I'm talking about, but basically we're focusing on self-love, because that leads to psychic ability. And if people try to tell you differently, more power to them. But to me personally, self-love is the way that we get to that vibration. It's the way we get to that point where we can start to focus on higher abilities. Without that, it's hard for us to focus on anything. When I do energy healing, when I do mediumship, even though mediumship for me is, this course teaches you how to do it, but that does not mean that I can do it. It means that I'm still learning. Okay. And there's a huge difference there. I can learn from a course, and I can practice the exercises, and that's beautiful and that's awesome. But for me to actually be able to do it, to look at someone and do that, I can't do that yet. But I definitely, with what the course has taught me, I could do that. But it comes into a place of like, am I ready to do this? Is my soul calling for this? And that's sort of what I wanted to do. And I ventured out, because I bought the mediumship course, and then I got the psychic review course for you guys to be able to review, and to be able to kind of see where you guys were at with this, and to talk with you guys about it. But it's something where you learn, And at first it seems slow and it seems like it's not clicking sometimes. But most of you guys will relate to a lot of these experiences, especially people that are empaths, right? Because empaths have a way of relating with those around them. This you can teach how to develop your ability, but also how to set boundaries, which again is basically saying, okay, I don't like your energy. I don't want to feel it. Empaths, the way we are today, we focus on everything as it's our own. We focus on all of these things as it's our own. And we're trying to express other people's emotions, and we're trying to do that. And it makes it difficult. When we set boundaries in the spirit world or in anything else, we actually start to develop, and we start to be able to understand our own energy and what other people's energies are. And that's a huge part of this for me, because up until about a year ago, 2 years ago, I thought I was a completely different person than who I am now. And now that I'm developing psychically, I'm starting to understand my own personality more. I'm starting to understand myself more. I'm starting to understand what it means to be me, right? And that sounds so cliche. That sounds so bizarre, but trust me, it's something that I feel like for us empaths, that's a huge deal, to be ourselves. When someone says to be yourself, for an empath, if all we've known is all these toxic energies, it's hard to understand what that means. And we're sort of these imitations, or we are these shells of energy, and we don't know how else to be. But once you start to develop psychically, you start to awaken more, you start to question why you believe the things you do, and you start to understand why you do the things you do. And the subconscious becomes conscious. And when that starts to happen, we start to become comfortable with ourselves. We start to not refuse ourselves anymore, and we start to accept ourselves for who we are, which is incredibly important in this kind of work. Now, that being said, everyone should develop psychically in the way that they prefer to develop. Okay, you should not be forced in any way to focus on being a psychic in the way that you close your eyes and get visions, because some people will have that, some people won't, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. You shouldn't feel shame about that. It's not about that. There's some people that are very good at feeling what's going on with a person, and that's an amazing gift. That's an amazing ability. Being able to see things is an amazing ability too. Hearing things psychically is an amazing ability too. But none of these are valued higher than the other one. And you can actually develop these abilities no matter what you were given. You can develop these abilities beyond what they are now, and you can develop even more abilities as you go on. So with that being said, me personally, still to this day, I love the psychic course. It absolutely taught me everything I wanted to know about being psychic. And I loved the mediumship course because, again, it taught me that. But for me personally right now, to get into that mediumistic state of mind, it's not something I can do easily. It's not something I can maintain. And it's not something that, again, it's not something that comes easily to me. I wasn't born with that gift, but anyone can develop it. And he talks about that as well. People being born with the gift of being psychic or very psychic or mediumistic, and people that have to work at it. Either way, a person can develop, but you're going to have a little bit of a head start if you were born with it. That's the only difference, okay? And just like some people are very good at playing music from an early age, and then other people have to learn. But if you have the ambition, you will learn, and you will develop, and you will grow from that. So that's definitely part of some of the things that are going on with that. And I know I'm being vague here. I'm just trying to focus on my train of thought. So give me 1 second. So when we're talking about psychic ability, the way that he talks about it is very much like, kind of like how a parent and I'm not trying to say anything about James Van Praagh, but he has like a grandfatherly energy. He has this kind of way of looking at things that's very refreshing and very open-minded and very much in a wisdom sort of way. And it's a very gentle process where it's not like a harsh energy. It's not this kind of you have to do it this way or else you're doing it wrong kind of an energy. It's a very much open and appreciative and very loving kind of energy. Right. And that's something that I think is hard to find in this world, especially in the spiritual community, because there's so much that happens. there's some amazing people out there for sure, but there are also people that have their egos mixed into it, and they have not ulterior motives, but it's just like you can tell that there's biases. You can tell that they feel like they have all the answers and the people should be asking them. And with James, I still feel like he's someone who wants to learn, he's someone who wants to grow, and he's someone who has a gift that goes beyond just the mediumship and just the spirituality sense of him. He's someone who definitely has a much bigger presence than you can imagine. It's just he's got a very gentle energy, and you can see some of the videos on his site when he's talking about stuff because he has some free videos. But he's someone I have taken on to be my personal mentor, and like, not that we talk personally or anything like that, but just someone that I've learned from doing the videos with, because when you're developing psychically, you tend to go in 1,000 different directions, and there's so many books out there, and there's some great books, but you want to follow a path. You want to stay on a path, and you want to go down that path, and you want to see what's there. You don't want to go down a path and constantly get little distractions here and there and then give up because you haven't achieved what you were going after. And this course focuses on you achieving things, not on you just letting it fall by the wayside. Again, that being said, though, the topic I was talking about before, I'm definitely more of someone who does energy healing. The psychic stuff for me is an incredible soul expression, but it's not my forte. That doesn't mean that I can't learn it. That doesn't mean that you can't learn it. But people have to focus on what they truly feel that they're good at. You don't have to fit in a mold. You don't have to do anything like that. You can focus on what you're good at. And it can literally be anything. It can be tarot cards. It can be dream interpretation, past life regressions, anything, even just talking lightly about spiritual things or deeply about spiritual things. It doesn't matter. It's all there to raise the vibration. It's all there to help. And that's the thing. You don't have to fit into a mold. You don't have to fit into anything like that. There's a spiritual society that we live in. And there's this tendency that psychics and people like that are more spiritual than we are. And they're not. They have information. And we should look up to them, absolutely. But we should also be self-aware. We should also be self-involved, where we're not focusing on their word as prophecy. We focus on our word too. And in our society, we've kind of lost that self-love. And that's sort of what I was doing this to talk about. And also the courses as well. But basically, I'll put it this way. You want to connect psychically. You want to have someone that can guide you, and you want to have someone that you can trust. You're not gonna contact any entities unless you yourself are incredibly fearful and incredibly nervous. And even then, it's kind of your own mind that you're contacting these entities from, because your spirit guides are going to step in and they're going to help in most situations. They're going to be helping you. So you want to focus on someone who can help you develop in a way that's from a human side of things, because your guides, as much as they want to reach out to you and help you, you sort of have to allow them to help. Versus when you have a physical person there or watching the videos or developing, you have a direction that you can go in. And I know a lot of people that are spiritual, and they kind of have this thing, and I did too, where I was self-taught and I don't need to learn anything else from anyone. I had that attitude. And you eventually come to a point where it's like, well, I want to help people. How can I help people? And when you come from that point of view, when you come from that stance, you start focusing on, okay, well, I need to get educated in things. Because if I really want to help people, I have to be educated. If I really want to give my best that I can to people, I have to get educated. And again, it's difficult to do, because we have to go back through our ego. We have to go through all these things, and we have to focus on kind of rebuilding ourselves up again. But if someone was to say to me, I don't tend to take anything anyone says at face value unless I myself have experienced it. I'm guilty of doing that sometimes, for sure. I think everyone is. But I tend to want to learn about it myself and then develop an opinion. If it's something like, do you believe in I'm trying to think of something, but I can't think of anything. But I tend to not believe other people's views on things until I have had my own experience, but I don't compare my experience to other people's, because everyone is their own person. And I'm not going to sit there and judge and say, well, my experience was better, the way I believe is better. It's different. And everyone here is experiencing something different. And that's kind of what this course teaches as well. And especially developing psychically, you may be someone that can pick up a photograph of someone developing psychically, and you'll be able to see what you can see. You'll be able to understand what this person was just from holding a photograph. Other people might not have that ability. Other people might see colors around people and might be able to interpret those colors. And some people have a bunch of different gifts and be able to use them in whatever way, but there's no comparing yourself to anyone else, because all of us are here to experience life. None of us are invalid, and none of us are just here to kind of kick the tires and then head back home, so to speak. We're here to really live life and have an experience. And some of us won't be psychic. A lot of us won't, but we'll have experiences. And that doesn't make you less than or more than or anything. It's just different, okay? That's my viewpoint, and that's sort of something that I wanted to talk about, because I've seen a lot of that kind of spiritual inequality where there's sort of a comparison between two people or two types of people. And everyone, I think, has something to contribute. They just have to want to contribute. They just have to want to be someone who is giving back something, right? And in order to give back something, we have to focus on healing traumas. We have to focus on healing past wounds. And then from there, we can focus on giving back, because until that point happens, gratitude becomes something that's not an attitude that we can understand. Once we start to heal, and once we start to understand why things happened the way they did, then we can start to come at it from a place of like, okay, I get it. I understand why that had to happen the way it did. And it wasn't meant to leave scars. It wasn't meant to leave wounds. It was meant to heal me in the grander picture, in the grander scheme of things. Okay. And to wrap it up, he does talk about the business end of the courses, like how to get clients and how to get people to rely on you, how to get people to trust you as kind of a source for people. And he talks about having development circles, which is like meditation circles, but you are focusing on psychically developing and having that kind of connection. There's also Facebook, and there's Skype groups. There's all sorts of things that you can do with that. But the main thing that he teaches me, or that he's taught me, is that you do not want to have people rely on you for an extended period of time. If I'm teaching a class with you and we're developing psychically, that's amazing. That's awesome. But I do not want to have you as someone who is my student forever. I would want to have you as someone who is my student for a time. And then I would want to go on, and I'd want you to have other people that you learn from, and I'd want you to eventually teach other people. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn from me or anyone else that you want to learn from. But what it means is that I don't want you to be relying on me for answers. I want you to eventually have your own kind of guidance system. And I would hope that I could teach you well enough, and that you could teach yourself well enough, and that you could teach me how to teach you well enough, that we could get that guidance system going for you, and that we could get something heading in that direction. Okay. If you're someone that I'm doing energy healing with, right? And that is my specialty, is that I do energy healing. I do not want you as someone who comes to me every week. I would want you as someone who comes to me maybe once every few months, and you tell me how you're doing. And if we have a session planned, that's great. But I want you to tell me how you're doing. I want you to tell me what's going on. And then we can focus on that. But what I don't want is someone who becomes reliant on me as a psychic or as a professional in any way. I want you to eventually have your own way of contacting your higher self, of meditation, of doing that. And it's not that I don't want you guys as students or as friends or as anything like that. It's the fact that I would want you to be able to trust yourself enough that you can do this yourself, and that you can feel confident enough that you can do this, right? And that's the whole point of becoming a psychic and becoming a, hey Tiki, it's the whole point of becoming a psychic and becoming a medium, or anyone in the spiritual community that has these kind of gifts. And anyone can develop these, right? But we're here to help people, and we're here to inspire people. And if you're always there, if you're someone that's always there and you're not, you're doubting yourself and you're still not learning, it's okay. We can focus on learning. But like I said, eventually we have it where you start developing as your own source of inspiration for you. And then we can go from there. Okay. So it's not like having a psychologist where every week you go and you talk to them. If you're working with me, if we do a course, it's 12 weeks. Okay. And we talk for 3 months and we get things going. That's what we do. But if you're someone after that needs more advice and you need more guidance, we can focus on that as well. But eventually I want you to be able to do your own thing. And sort of a bird flying out of the nest kind of a thing. I love you guys. I'm not trying to get rid of you, but I want you to understand that you have the ability to fly yourself. And that's what I'm learning now. That's, I think, what a lot of people are learning. And it's never too late to pick up this skill set of being a psychic or of being anything. It's never too late. You just have to want to develop in those directions, and you have to want to have that sort of self-love, that sort of that way of looking at yourself where you can develop and you can be comfortable. Because I know as we develop, or as we unfold in the psychic sense, as we unfold and we start to see ourselves for who we really are, there's this thing that happens where we judge every aspect of it. We judge every little tiny thing, every tiny inconsistency, the way we talk, the way we walk, the way we look at other people, the way we look at ourselves. And when we do that, we lose sight of what's going on. Judgment is the thing that really stifles self-love, because when we do that, we're not judging ourselves to make ourselves better. We're judging ourselves to be critical and to really just nitpick at things. It doesn't help, because we can't compare ourselves to anyone else, because we only have us. We're the only us that we have, so we can't do that. We can't compare ourselves to anything else, and it just doesn't make sense. It's like comparing water with orange juice. They're completely different. It doesn't make sense. Like, someone may prefer one or the other, but in the end, it doesn't matter. It's just a comparison, and comparisons in this situation are not something that are helpful. To say this person is a medium and they have all these accreditations and they have this and this and this, and I don't have anything, and then you get down on yourself, that doesn't inspire you. That doesn't help you in any way. Instead, you're saying this person has something I don't have, and I could never get it. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. With dedication, with research, with appreciation, we can grow and we can develop. You have to be smart about it too, though. If you set a time limit to developing spiritually, you're not going to do it. In 10 years, I'm going to be a medium. I'm going to have something, sweetheart. Probably not, okay? It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of dedication. Could you be psychic in that time? And could you help a lot of people? Yes. But to say that you would have these definite goals and you have these time frames, it doesn't work that way. You have to focus on developing and on enjoying the journey, not so much the destination, because as soon as the destination comes that you thought was there, it's going to go and you're going to have to chase after it in another way, right? It's the journey that we have to enjoy. It's the present. It's the now. It's not the future that we have to enjoy, and we can't live in the past. And so it has to be the now. Okay. So, and I like this quote. Okay. And I heard it from Kung Fu Panda. Good movie. But let me just say it like this. The past is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That's why they call it the present, right? I'm hoping I said that right, but I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say. We have today. We don't have yesterday. We don't have tomorrow. We have today, and we might not be alive for tomorrow. And remembering yesterday is great, but it doesn't do anything for our present moment. Every time that we focus on the day, today, we start to develop as psychics. We start to develop as mediums. We start to develop as spiritual people, okay? When we focus on anything else, we're giving away that power. We're giving away that ability because we're focusing on the nostalgia of the way things were, and that doesn't help us with who we are now. And yes, Tracy, yes, absolutely. But by focusing on how we develop and by focusing on what we can do to develop ourselves, instead of feeling sorry for ourselves or instead of putting ourselves in that rut, we can focus on really letting ourselves bloom, really letting ourselves flower. And again, that starts from not judging ourselves. Whenever we're faced with anxiety, whenever we're faced with judgment, whenever we're faced with anxiety, First off, doesn't make you any less of a person. Absolutely not. You guys are lovely. That does not make you less of a person. But what we can do is we can question the anxiety. We can understand why is it there, and we can ask it questions. Okay? We don't have to believe the anxiety to be what it is. And eventually we start to develop a voice where we can understand what is anxiety talking and what is us talking. And that's sort of the first step to developing. And that's what we need to focus on, is developing in a way where we don't look down on ourselves for having anxiety or having depression or having anything of that sort. We instead look at it, we accept ourselves, and we say we're doing our best because that's all we can do. And being down on yourself doesn't help. It doesn't help with that at all. We need to come from a place of love, and that's what real spiritual leaders, that's what real people do, okay? And all of us have it in us to be that spiritual leader, or to be that person, either to ourselves, a community, it doesn't matter. But when we heal, we're healing. We're healing everything. We're healing generational trauma from our families. We're healing all of this energy. And that's the whole point of why you want to develop as a psychic, a medium, a healer, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so we take the consciousness, we take us, and when we magnify it, when we look within and we focus, that's when it starts to develop as psychic ability. In fact, once we start to become comfortable with ourselves, that's when the true psychic ability starts to develop, because from there, it's neutral ground. It's something where we can plant a seed and we can see the gifts start to develop. And what's interesting is that sometimes as we develop as psychic or medium or whatever it happens to be, I'm just going to say spiritually from now on, because I think that'll be easier to understand. So when we develop spiritually, we tend to look at things in a way of, let's see, I was on track here and then I kind of lost it. Give me a second. Okay, when we're developing spiritually, we tend to look at things as being a part of us or being apart from us, right? And really, we're connected to everything on literally an atomic level. On a quantum level, we're connected to every single thing. And I believe it happens with realities as well. I believe it happens with other universes. Everything in our time exists simultaneously. It's humans that have kind of put it into a way where it seems linear, or it seems like there's a forward and a back kind of a thing. We're all connected in the now moment. And when we start to set our manifestations and our goals on something, we're actually attracting it to us. We're taking that energy, we're putting it into us, and we're kind of reflecting it back out. And when we do that, the universe likes to mirror that energy, and it gives us more of it. Like if you're someone who plays an instrument, for example, you'll struggle at first, but you'll actually start to get pretty good at it sooner rather than later. And it's about the neurons, it's about all of this stuff happening. But with spiritual abilities, it's the same thing. When we start to meditate, it gets easier to meditate. When we start to focus on abundance, it gets easier to focus on that. But because we're in a place where it's hard for us to focus on those things all the time, and it's hard, we tend to look down at ourselves, or we tend to think, well, they have an ability that I don't have. And that's absolutely not true. Anyone can develop these things. It's not just a pipe dream. It's not just something where it's like, oh, that so-and-so has this and I can never achieve it. Everyone can. And if someone tells you you can't do it, I mean, give them a big old F you, because I'm telling you right now, you can do it. Okay. Don't say that. But just realize that there's something to being here at this moment right now. It's not a coincidence. You're not just put here to suffer or to feel. It's not anything grander than connecting with your true self. And that seems like such a lofty goal. It's really not. It's something that we can experience every day by being in the moment, by being in the present, and by focusing on love and compassion over anger and kind of that instant attitude that we have in today's world, where it's like everything needs to be done instantly. Everything needs to be done fast. That's spoiled us. That's made it so that we don't have that magic anymore, where we're in the moment, because we have something that distracts us, our phones or our laptops or our TV or whatever it happens to be. And again, don't beat yourself up if that's something you do, because that's not what this is about. It's not about judging. It's just about, where do we want to put our time? If Yeah, Tracy, yeah, it does. It absolutely helps. To practice these abilities, you'll gain more abilities. You'll gain proficiency in these abilities. In fact, if you go back, and I'm even a little nervous doing this now, you guys can tell my speech is a little fluttery, but if you go back to my earlier videos, my earliest ones, it was very difficult for me to do videos. Okay, but last year I started doing videos. I started doing them more and more. I started to understand myself more and more, and I just went with it. And from that, I started to develop. And anyone can do this. You just have to want to have the desire to do this, whatever you want to do. If we want to develop spiritually, psychically, mediumistically, then we have to focus on why we want to do that. And the courses, and I've kind of gone on a tangent here where we haven't talked about the courses, but the courses he talks to you about that. You're writing down a list. You're focusing on why you want to develop spiritually. Why do you want to develop spiritually in a psychic way, a medium way, in an energy healing way, whatever it happens to be? What's the reason? Okay. If it's to become famous, rethink it just a little bit. Okay. Because that's not what this is about. It's not about ego. Okay. We're all connected anyway. So for one of us to be more popular than the other person in the spiritual community, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a lot of sense. We have to focus on what we have to offer. Okay. And it's not a high view count, and it's not money rolling in a way where we never have to worry about finances again. It's not about that. It's about focusing on how we can help people, what we can do in the here and now to help someone with their day or with their life, or to give someone information. And that's what it is helping other people heal. And if you're someone that can't do that now, that's okay. It doesn't belittle you as a person. It's not something that I look down on. And if anyone else looks down on that, then I pity that person, because it's not about that. It's about coming from a place of being able to love yourself and focusing on that. Okay. Whew. Okay. So that's how we do it. If we focus on spiritual development, and the first thing we have to do is be comfortable with ourselves. When we can sit and be comfortable with ourselves, even if it's just for a second, that's the start of something. Okay. When we take that comfort, when we take that ability to be comfortable with ourselves and we kind of magnify it, we make it bigger. And then from that comfort with ourselves, we start to get more comfortable, and we can start to develop more psychically. We can start to come at things neutrally, because that's what it is. If I'm someone who is being a psychic or a medium, okay, I have to come from a neutral space. I absolutely have to. And it's not at all an easy thing to do all the time. Okay. People that are really good at this, and I'm not, but I'm practicing. Okay. I'm not being hard on myself. I'm just being honest. Okay. I'm practicing. I'm learning. But people that can do this all the time have an incredible gift. Okay. And they have to come from a place where their heart is neutral, where their space is neutral, where they're not focusing on the day-to-day thoughts. Instead, they're focusing on the heart space. They're focusing on making the other person's life better. And that's something that's absolutely beautiful. Okay. So when you come from that space, then you can develop into a psychic or a medium, but you have to come from a space of love. And it has to be a kind of love that's unconditional, that's non-judgmental. If I'm helping someone heal, I'm never judging that person, because their journey is completely different than mine. I'm not there to judge. I am there to help. Okay. No matter what the person's gone through, I'm there to help. Okay. And it becomes something that's very difficult. And I'll give you an example. I won't name any names, but basically, if you're someone who's experiencing some kind of trauma, or you're going through something, for me to be sad with you, that doesn't help you. It shows sympathy, which is amazing, and I'm very sympathetic. But it needs to have, I need to come from a space where I'm focusing on letting that healing energy in, and I can't go into that space with you in that way. The spirit guides can go there. They can go there with you, and they can help you, sort of support you in that way. But it has to be something where we're focusing on the uplifting, and we're focusing on what's anchoring that energy, what's focusing on, anchoring that energy to put the trauma in you, to make it so the energy doesn't flow within you as well. And again, there's no judgment. If there's trauma, if there's not trauma, it's all about healing. Okay. And there's just parts of us that aren't healed. Every one of us has parts that aren't healed. That's why we're here, honestly. That's what I think. But again, it's just about focusing on that. So we come from a place of comfort, we step into a place of neutrality, and we step into a place where when someone has experienced something, we help them with it. We don't dive into it with them because that doesn't help them. If two people, let's say two people are in a lifeboat that's sinking. Thank you so much, Tracy. I appreciate that. But if you're in a lifeboat and the lifeboat is sinking, okay, if I'm on land and I go out to go in the water with you, that doesn't necessarily help you, okay? Let's say I can't swim and I get in there and I'm drowning too. I'm in the water as well. That doesn't help you. Instead, what a spiritualist person does, what someone who's a psychic or a medium does, is they're on ground that's a little more stable, and they can help bring you to that stable ground as well. They don't pass judgment. They don't do anything of the sort. They just help to lift you up, and they teach you ways and steps that you can lift yourself up. Hey, buddy. Yeah, and they teach you ways that you can lift yourself up. And when we focus on that, then we develop. Then we become stronger. But it just has to focus. It has to come from that way of neutrality. If I'm really into the story, if I'm really into what's going on, which I am, I'm listening to everything that you guys say. But if I become empathically invested into it and it starts to detrimentally affect me, I'm no good to anybody. So I have to come from a place where my spirit guides are handling it, and I call upon archangels, and you can call upon whatever it is you believe in, whatever you want to call upon that is of the highest good, you can call upon that to help someone heal. But you have to focus on their healing first. And that's what we focus on with psychic abilities, with mediumistic abilities, and with energy healing, okay? You have to focus on what's the thing you can do to help heal this person the most. And it's not necessarily you doing the work, but you're a conduit. You're kind of like a glass. There's this water coming in, and then it's coming out, and the person's drinking that, right? You're just a vessel. You're just a container. You're taking the energy and you're giving it to the person. And all you're doing is holding a space of neutrality where you can give that energy to the person freely, passively, in a way where they can start to benefit from that. Sure what that means, if I can be honest. Yeah, I'm not really sure. And it was Seth, right? Red Sun? Was it Seth? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Seth. But it's one of those things. Okay, all right. It's one of those things where we have to focus on, and if you want to elaborate what that means, Seth, and we can definitely talk about that, but I'm not sure what you mean in the context you put that in. So, so we're focusing on developing as a psychic, and again, focus on how you can help heal people if that's the place you're in. If you're not in that place, then experiment by playing with tarot cards, asking questions, getting answers, okay? And not getting too attached to outcomes. That's kind of the thing with tarot is we'll ask a question and we'll get the death card, or we'll ask a question and we'll think negatively, or we'll ask a question, we'll get the devil card, thinking negatively, tower card, and we'll keep drawing more and more cards to try and get a favorable answer to what it is that we want to do. And eventually spirit says in its own way, it's like, okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're going to get the answer that you need to have. But if you're going to keep digging and digging until you get the answer you want, then I can give you the illusion of that, because that's what you need to feel comfortable. It's not that it's bad or anything like that. It's just what you need in that moment. And you're not ready to see the truth for what it is, because there's biases that have been placed. And again, no judgment. But when there's biases placed and we're doing a reading on ourselves, that makes it difficult to understand the reading. That's why, for instance, if someone asked me to do a psychic reading on someone I was really close to, that was involved in my life in every way, a parental figure, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a friend, a family member, whatever it happens to be, it would be difficult for me to do that because I have biases. I have a stake in the outcome, right? And it's difficult to talk to people honestly about things, and that's why it's difficult. When you're reading for a stranger, though, it becomes a lot easier because you don't have a stake in that person's you're not in that person's life. If you're doing it for someone that's a stranger, someone that you've just kind of met online, you aren't in that person's life and heavily invested most of the time. So that's sort of why it's harder to read family, in my opinion. But as we develop more psychically and we meditate and we get to that space where it's easier for us to understand ourselves, I gotta grab some water. Hold on. Whew. Okay. Give me just a second. Whew. Okay. But we start to understand our biases and we start to understand our belief systems. And eventually we can come to a place where belief systems become sort of not a framework of who we are, but sort of a way of looking at ourselves just differently, right? Because belief systems can be great, but there also isn't a lot of room to keep growing in a lot of belief systems, because if you get information that is different from your belief system, you'll take in part of that information. And it could be something that's the truth to you, but you'll have biases, you'll have preconceived notions, and you'll say, well, that's not true. I don't want to believe in that. And you'll actually hurt yourself in the process. But it's all about learning and growing. And belief systems are a huge part of that. And if you have a belief system, I'm not talking bad about it at all. I'm just saying that it's important to question, and it's important to always be questioning, to always be learning, because when we stop learning, when we stop asking questions, we stop growing. And when we stop growing, a part of us dies. A part of us just isn't around anymore. There's not that childlike wonder, and that's what helps with being a psychic. With being a medium, you want to have someone or you want to have yourself who's in touch with that inner child, because the imagination, bias towards family and close friends, in my opinion too, Tracy, it's just difficult because you have a stake in it. And you're going to read, you might not intentionally to hurt them or anything like that, but there's going to be information that you could get that you might not say, and then you could hold it in, and then that could become something that stews inside of you because you want to be friendly, you want to be nice. And in our world, the way we live, sometimes the truth can be so much more offensive to someone than it can be healing. And that makes it difficult. It really does. So yeah, it's just one of those things that we have to focus on getting rid of the biases, and we have to understand why we think the way we think. And that leads to comfort. That leads to being comfortable with ourselves, and that leads to, again, growing. But that's the main thing on being psychic, is it's not this grand gesture of like, I'm going to meditate for 480,000 hours and I'm going to achieve enlightenment and all that. No, it's about taking little steps. If you turn it into a grand process, if you turn psychic ability into this grand thing, you're not going to achieve it. Okay, if you turn anything into that grand kind of goal, you're going to give up. You're going to say, I can't do it because it's difficult because of this, this, and this. But if instead you look at it as, I will become psychic by being comfortable with myself and by experiencing that self-love, which you will, then it becomes a lot easier because it is a part of you. It's already a part of you. Okay, you don't have to try to do anything. You just have to be yourself. And therein lies kind of a catch-22 where we've lost sight of how to be ourselves in silence. We can be ourselves when it's noisy. We can be ourselves when there's distractions. But when it's silent, when we're about to go to sleep, when there's kind of that feeling of like not knowing what to do next, that's when it's hard for us. That's when it's hard for us to know who we are. It's hard for us to trust our own voice. It's hard for us to develop in that way. And eventually with self-love, you'll start to get to a point where you're not haunted when you go to sleep at night, and you're not feeling invaded when other people are around you. You can start to understand yourself, and you can start to understand your own self-worth. And again, setting boundaries is also very important, because boundaries are one of the ultimate forms of self-love, in my opinion. And it's one of those ways of growing and allowing yourself to grow. When you set a boundary, you're allowing yourself to grow. You're allowing yourself to say, I don't like this. It makes me uncomfortable. And when you do that and you establish that something has made you uncomfortable, you start to establish a sense of identity. And when we start to establish a sense of identity, we start to understand ourselves, right? And that's the whole thing. We sort of have to focus on psychic development like a kindergarten for our spiritual sense. I have a problem interpreting signs, visions, and synchronicities. Well, Seth, go into that, and then we can, or you can message me, whatever you need to do. I want to make it comfortable, but you can message me at the email, or you can go into it on here. Any of you guys, if you have any questions, message either here or in an email. If it's something personal, you can do an email. If it's something that you want everyone to see, put it up here. But I don't want to make you guys uncomfortable by posting things that you wouldn't want other people to see. Okay. All right. Sounds good, Seth. That sounds awesome. But it's one of those things that we need to focus on, that childlike development again. And we need to humble ourselves. We need to not think we know all the answers. Because I'll let you in on something. We don't. Okay. We don't know everything. Okay. And we just have to accept that as kind of a fact. And I'm okay with that. And other people can be or can't be okay with that. It doesn't matter so much. But once you start understanding that you don't know everything, and you probably won't know everything, there's a huge pressure that's relieved off of you. Because for me personally, I'm a Taurus, okay? And I've also got a big stick up my ass, okay? And I'm going to tell you why I got that big stick up my ass. I'm very analytical, okay, or anal, as some people would call it. And this spiritual transformation for me has allowed me to not be that way so much. I still get that way, but I don't look at things and observe things so much that I observe it to death and I just kill it, okay? That doesn't help. That doesn't help anybody, and especially not me. But again, come from a place of non-judgment. Yeah, Tiki, it's one of those things. It's just hard to come from a place where we focus more on love and non-judgment, because especially if you're very analytical, like I was, still am, okay? And that's another thing, is you have to be fun with yourself, right? I know I'm that way. I know I can be that way. I can be a stickler for the details for no reason. And I just have to love myself, move on, and just understand that. Yes, they can. They absolutely can, Seth. They can drain you. Loving too much and crying a lot, at least you cry. At least you let it out. That's the important thing, is that we have to cry. We have to let it out. And that's another thing going on to this, is that kind of like a child, how we have, or how we, okay. Like how a child has these kind of temper tantrums. When they have those temper tantrums, they're developing their boundaries. They're learning what they can and can't get away with. And when a child starts to develop those tendencies, that is how they develop. That's how they grow. And for us, we kind of have to go back, and in a spiritual sense, in a emotional sense, we need to see what we can and can't get away with ourselves, with sort of the energy. That's good. That's really good. And good tears, bad tears. Tears are good. Crying, letting it out, that is good. Okay, holding things in, that's toxic. That doesn't help anybody. But if you're someone that can't, and but if you're someone, and I saw your comment, Tracy, I was just reading it, and I'll elaborate on that in a second. But if you're someone who can't really let things out, and they can't let their emotions out, don't beat yourself up over that, because I was that same way, where it was incredibly difficult for me to cry, and there's still times where it's very hard for me to let my emotions out. But don't beat yourself up if you're that way. There just needs to be a point where you have to reach that point where you want to feel, where you want to understand your emotions. And if all you feel is that numbness, that sense of like you don't feel anything, that's actually feeling something, as weird as that sounds. And it's one of those things that's very difficult at first, but that is a huge, huge thing for us to be able to focus on. When we focus on anything, even if it's numbness, even if it's the inability to feel, when we focus on it and we allow ourselves to feel it without judgment, okay, and I'm talking about feeling that numbness, when we allow ourselves to feel it, double cancer. Ooh, okay, that is some intense stuff right there. But when we allow ourselves to feel even that numbness, we can start to grow and we can start to understand, and we will actually be able to feel and to cry and to let that out eventually. But it's just one of those things. And I'm going to say this here. So definitely an empath, so I understand why it's so important to keep trying to be able to focus on love and acceptance. Okay, so what I feel is important. I love that you guys are talking. Awesome. Let's make a community. Let's talk. But when we develop psychically, we start to get to that boundary point like I was talking about. And what's interesting is most people, when they start to develop psychically, things come out of the woodwork at you left and right. I'm not even shitting you. It's like literally almost every day, like something new is coming at your door. But when you set boundaries, the universe can listen to that, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is what you want. Okay, it's a form of self-care in the way that we're saying when we set a boundary, we're doing two things. Okay, we're saying what we do want, and we're saying what we don't want. Okay, that's what a boundary is. And when we do that and we keep doing that, we're not limiting ourselves, we're actually freeing ourselves, because we're taking away the energy that would have been used to harass us. We're taking that energy away, and we're saying, okay, universe, here's what I do want. Here's, kind of like a mail order catalog, like you flip through and you're like, okay, I want this and this and this. And then the universe is like, well, shit, if I would have known, I would have, anyway. And then you get it, Amazon, ships it to you, the whole deal, universal Amazon, right? But that's sort of how the universe works. That's how the whole thing is that it's that way. There's two ways, Seth, in my opinion, okay? The whole time I'm talking to you guys, I'm going to use my opinion, okay? And if you guys vibe with it, vibe with it. If you guys don't agree with it, don't agree with it. You guys focus on what feels good to you. That's what this is all about, okay? So just so I can get that out there. So let's see. I'm starting to feel that way. I'm wondering if it's because I'm really trying to focus on me instead of love. Well, when you say me, do you mean like self-love, or do you mean like selfish love? No, I don't even believe in selfish love. I believe there's self-love, and then I believe there's kind of more of an ego sense of self, where we're not focusing on the higher good so much. There's two ways we can focus on that. But I gotta take another drink of water. Hold on. Oh man. But also, okay, so that's the thing, Seth, in my opinion. Again, I'm using my opinion. But if you're focusing on love, but not love towards a specific female, yes, self-love, okay. Focusing on love just in general is a beautiful thing to focus on, because when we focus on self-love, there's no expectations. If it's true self-love, there's no expectations of what's to come, and that's okay, because we're allowing what is going to happen, and we're not putting any limits on it, and we're not having that be something. If that's something for you, that's awesome. Being able to radiate that kind of energy is really good. You don't have to define it so much that you crush it and you kill it. I mean, if you take a flower, right? If you take a flower and you look at it and you think that it's beautiful, the ultimate thing that you can do for that flower is to leave it alone, not to pick it. When you pick the flower, it will wither and die. Self-love and that feeling of unconditional love, it's sort of the same way. When you're really admiring something, let it be. If it comes to you, that's beautiful. If it doesn't, then you have to let that go. But forcing anything to happen, that is only going to cause pain. Again, my opinion, but that's what I'm feeling, okay? And a lot of times there's that feeling of feeling that someone else was special and feeling that they had that key to your heart, so to speak. And then we find out that they weren't, or we find out that there's sort of other underlying issues. And that's why we focus on self-love. That's why that's important, because no one else has the key to our happiness but us. And when we put it in other people's hands, it tends to get misused. It tends to open other doors for other people, but not our own doors. Does that make sense, you guys? And I can understand that. And that's okay to feel that they haven't been right for you, Seth. That's absolutely fine. Um, and twin flames, soulmates, all of that stuff, that's incredibly important stuff. But again, we have to look at the growing of the individual versus the relationship and where that comes into play. The way I like to look at it is like this. If you have one person in a relationship, that's great. You have two people in a relationship, that can be beautiful. But to me, there's three people or three things in a relationship, right? So to me, you have the two people in the relationship, and then you have the relationship itself. And that to me is something that needs to be sustained by attention, by observation. There needs to be something in the relationship where it kind of has a life of its own, right? And not in a way where it's like an enmeshment where we're not us without the other person being around, because that's not good. That's attaching our identity to someone else or something else. Again, no judgment. I'm not judging, and you guys shouldn't judge yourselves if there's a situation you're in that's similar. But there needs to be a way that we can have a relationship where when we're apart from the person, we're us, and when we're with the person, we're us. But we don't definitively need the person. We just want to have them around, right? Because they help us grow. They help us see things within ourselves. We see things within them, and there's a growing. If at any point there's a sort of stop in the relationship, or there's this sort of sense of not moving onward anymore, or a sense of, yes, always stay yourself, or a sense of even laziness, right? When there's when there is not a sense of self-improvement anymore in the person, that always goes into the relationship. That always does. And when that starts to happen in the relationship, right, a building of love and growth. And that's the whole thing, is that you want to focus on that. And the love is going to come from a place where the person is looking out for the best for you. And that can be difficult growing up when you didn't have those connections. But again, when we start to develop spiritually and we start to focus on that, we can start to develop those sort of senses of what it was like to grow up in a normal environment. And we can start to see that. But we sort of have to instill it in ourselves. We have to learn that for ourselves, because we're not, if you grew up and you didn't have a good childhood, and most empaths, to be honest, most empaths have a hard childhood. Most empaths have a difficult childhood, okay? But that doesn't mean that the rest of their lives are going to go in that way. It will go in that way if it's unobserved. If it just stays in the subconscious, it will go that way. But if you look at it, right, going back to the basics, that's a good way of putting it. And, that's what we can be doing in August all the way through. Like, kids go back to school, right? We go back to the basics and we look at it and we start to understand that. And we start to realize that once we look at it in a way where we're not, and that's good, Seth. That's awesome. And I understand there's probably wanting to, in some sense, reach out and share these gifts with people. And until you understand boundaries a little bit more, and we understand sort of developing the self a little bit more, then it's something where we have to focus on ourselves. Like, take this time to be you time. It's Seth time, right? And that's what we need to focus on. And that's good. That's good that you want him in your life. But it's just, and again, all of this is my opinion, you guys. If you don't agree with it, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to get bent out of shape. It's just, it's part of the deal. where I'm teaching you, and hopefully you're teaching me, and hopefully we meet in the middle. But if we don't, let me know. But that's sort of what I'm. There we go, Tiki. And I will do me, Seth. Do you, boo? I will do it. I will absolutely do it. And then I'll have some days where I don't, because you know what? That's being human, and we all have days where we just don't, and that's okay. We all have days that are off, and that's another thing in the spiritual sense. I'm not going to do videos when I'm having an off day. You guys see me when I'm feeling good, and I do my videos. I have my off days too, and I'm not going to record myself because I'm having an off day, right? But that's another thing, is that we glamorize that sense of like everyone else has all these great things going on in their lives, and you never see the parts of their lives where there's sadness and there's things like that, unless it's like a family kind of thing. But that's what we have to focus on. Okay, you know what? You always I meant Tracy, LOL with the boo part. Okay, you know what though? I'm gonna say that was for me, Seth, because I like being called boo. So we're gonna go with that. Some bro love going on, some boo love going on, and we'll have a good time with that. Thank you, Tiki. I appreciate that. But we got to focus on. I will do me. I will. You boo, bro. Okay. Okay, I can go with that. I can definitely go with that. Where was I? But okay, so if you guys, like I was saying, if you guys really do appreciate what I'm saying, and you guys want to kind of learn where I learned my stuff from a little bit, I would say check out the links down below for the stuff, the mediumship course and the psychic course. Get the psychic course first, if you guys. But get the psychic course first if you guys are doing that. You can look at the links down below for the James Van Praagh stuff. I kind of went off on a tangent, but that's what this is about. Yes, everyone is awesome. That's the whole deal. Everyone is awesome. We're doing this. We got this shit on lock, and we're all fine AF, right? We're all good. But you guys can check out that stuff below, okay? And I don't get any kickback from the links or anything like that. It's not an affiliate link. I just got a review to do for James Van Praagh's psychic course, and he was kind enough to let me do that, to let me go over the course material. And so after this video ends, for you guys that came in later, it should be uploaded on YouTube. Yes, he does explain how to handle the energies. It's a bit of an investment. Yep, Tiki, it is team awesome. Sure as hell. Oh, okay. It is kind of late. 2:41. Okay. I'll have a gentleman's breakfast and then probably go to bed. I don't know what that means, but we'll go from there. So he does explain how to handle the energies, but it basically, like I was talking about, we set boundaries, right? And when we set boundaries, we can handle the energies, but it's definitely about boundaries. And it's definitely about grounding ourselves. That's pretty late. Seth, you should be in bed. I should be in bed too, though. But he does talk about coming at things from an empath way, and he goes into like developing the different abilities. I'm trying not to be a night owl, but yeah, I hear you. I get in the night owl mood too. Hoot hoot. What was I going to say? Yeah, energies. So he talks about how to handle those, talks about chakras, talks about the whole deal with how to develop as a psychic. If that's something you want to do, it's an investment though, okay? His courses they're not cheap, but they're also, I've never gotten information like this anywhere else, and I trust him to be my mentor. So again, I haven't talked to him in person, but he's someone that I would trust to be my mentor when I eventually do meet him in person. And he does talk about the chakras. He talks about all that stuff, but he talks about how to incorporate energy and how to actually move it through the body and how to focus on that. And it's another topic for discussion, but he definitely focuses on every part of it, and he's a master in what he's learned, and the way that he teaches is very loving and very soothing. I could listen to him and just fall asleep. The way he talks, the way his energy is, his aura is awesome. And Tai Chi helps too, absolutely. And it's similar to that. And teaching yourself is good too. Any way you guys want to learn is awesome. For me personally, I reached a point where I couldn't teach myself anymore. And I just went in and I started learning from other people in the way that was comfortable for me and taking what resonated and what didn't. And I had to go back and kind of humble myself in that way. Either way, if you're teaching yourself, that's awesome. If you want to learn, that's awesome too. But just learn and keep growing. And that's the main thing, because growing is love. Growing is self-love and self-improvement. So, yeah, definitely, I would say. So he does teach how to handle energies. He teaches about being an empath. He teaches about, there's so much that he teaches. And then there's other books that teach other things on how to develop so many things. And his mediumship is what he specializes in, and he goes around and he teaches those. You're very welcome, Tiki. Absolutely. Take what resonates, leave the rest for sure. I'm not going to be offended. And anyone that is a teacher or anyone that wants to be a teacher or a speaker of any kind, if they get offended, then, that's on them. Okay. You guys have the right to take what resonates and leave what doesn't and just go with it, because that's what it's about. Okay. If anything is forcing, don't do it. But let's see. So right now the courses are 25% off. The psychic course is the one I would go with first if you guys are new to developing. There you go. Yep. Take what applies and let the other stuff fly. Absolutely. And we have to focus on definitely developing in a way that's comfortable, because in the way that we've learned here on this earth plane, so to speak, we've definitely gone into a place where we have to force it. And again, I'll leave that there. I'll leave that forcing it thing there, because we've talked about that quite a bit. But with this, I want you to look at developing psychically as a form of, it's like a hobby. Okay. It's not something you sit down and you do begrudgingly. It's something that you focus on in a way that's like very, like something you do on the side. It's not something you're going to be doing for anything else other than to just develop yourself and know yourself better. And when we know ourselves better, we are better to help other people if that's what we choose to do. Some people that I teach, because I am a teacher as well, I teach energy healing, and I teach thank you, Tracy. You haven't seen me on my bad days. That stick is so far up my butt. But I'm just saying, it's hard because you get obstinate, you get in your own way when you're a Taurus. I've had a lot of people in my life help me move forward, but not without my stubborn ass being a stubborn ass. You know what I mean? But I was going to say, so if we're focusing on, let's see, what was I saying? So we're focusing on developing, focusing on, we're just focusing on doing this as a hobby, as something where we're not worried about results, so to speak. Because in this field that you're going into, it's not like a normal thing. Okay. If you exercise, you'll see the muscle definition, and other people will see muscle definition. But with psychic ability, you're going to be the one that sees it. You're going to be the one that feels it. And other people, if they pay for a reading or if they want to have a reading with you, they can see and feel it too. But it's not something you're supposed to flex around other people. It's nothing like that at all. It's something that's a gentle process, and being a psychic is always about being gentle and always about healing, right? So that's something, if I ever had to say anything over and over again, and I have, it's that. It's definitely that we're focusing on a gentle nature. Psychics aren't people that say it, and it's always a gentle process, okay? But when we're focusing on energy healing, that's what I teach. And if you guys would be interested in that, I can teach that as well. I do offer one-on-one coaching for that, for the energy healing. And I'm going to set a testimonial page up on my site, and you guys can see what other people have to say. But that's where I shine, okay? And that's where a lot of other people can shine too, because not all of us are psychics or want to be psychics. Some of us are going to be really good with numerology, astrology, tarot cards, dream interpretation, past life regression, all of that kind of stuff. And all of it leads to the same thing. It leads to a sense of self-enlightenment, and it leads to a service, and it leads to helping people, as long as we come at it from that point of view of helping. So yeah, you guys, it has been a while. And yes, energy healing is awesome. That's what I prefer to do, and that is my gift for now, the area I want to grow in. So that's definitely something that I'm striving towards. But I think, you guys, I'm going to leave you. I hope you enjoyed the video. I think, Seth, it's you in your head for sure. Because there shouldn't be a negative. If there's a judging voice, if there's a negative voice, I feel like it's you in your head. I feel like that's definitely where that's coming from. But like I'm saying, you guys, I'm going to go. I really appreciated talking to you guys, and I will do another one of these hopefully before too long. I'm going to try and get more videos out there. I know I take my time, but I'm doing me, and I'm trying to focus on just developing myself, and then I can come back with what I have, give it to you guys, and not feel, you know. All right. But you guys, you be safe, you stay awesome, okay? And I will talk to you guys later. All right.